welcome to another episode of Clever Dicks. In this episode we talk to Mary Fisher. Mary is probably one of the best New Zealand swimmers that most of us haven't really heard about. At various times she's held 5 world records. At the Paralympics she's had 2 gold, 2 silver and a bronze, and at the Swimming World Champs in one meet she got 5 golds and 1 silver at Montreal. Added to that, she's a member of the New Zealand Order of Merit for services to swimming. She is an amazing swimmer, a real treasure for New Zealand. We talk about her story of swimming, how she got into it and some of the challenges that athletes with disabilities have got. We talk about her work when she's supporting other people who go swimming, her cold swimming that she's done, and some of the things that she's looking forward to. She was looking forward to a 10-kilometre swim, which I know that she's since done, and possibly a triathlon in the future. She is an amazing person, and it was a great conversation. Unfortunately, halfway through, Duncan's microphone stopped working, so I had to relay all his questions to her, but we managed to get through in the end. I think you'll enjoy this as much as we enjoyed making it. So, welcome to another Clever Dicks podcast. In this podcast, we're talking to Mary Fisher. Hello, Mary.
Kia ora. Nice to be here.
Great. Okay, so Mary, we normally just sort of start off these podcasts by just giving people an opportunity to tell us a little bit about their swimming story, sort of how they got started and what their journey's been, and then we'll go along and dive into some details as we go along. So, I suppose to start off with, what's your swim story, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure thing. So I guess beginnings of swimming for me was pretty typical of some Kiwi kids, I guess, in that I enjoyed trying various sports and loved the feeling of being in the water and just playing around in the local pool, and didn't really like the first few swimming sports I did because I wasn't, I wasn't in the top group and I guess quietly competitive young child. And I also was born with a genetic condition that meant I had about 10% of regular vision as a kid, but I didn't know any different, right? So I just knew that I was bad at most ball sports or most sports where you're in a team and trying to other people were relying on you, and swimming didn't have that component, which was really beneficial for me. And there weren't kind of general obstacles or bumpy ground. It was just oh, actually, I think after one of these swimming sports, I would like to try doing this as an after school activity. And so I went along to the Trentham school pool in Upper Hutt, which I think was 15 metres. And when you could do 3 lengths of the Trentham school pool in a row, you were allowed to graduate to the Upper Hutt Swim Club. And so that's kind of like a small, mostly volunteer-led club, at least at the time I was there. But I just kind of really enjoyed the process of putting in loads of effort and seeing some results. And then I guess my parents and I were a bit more aware of the national age group championships, and I qualified for the juniors, the kind of 12 and under, and against sighted swimmers and people with no impairment. But with national age groups, there suddenly became this para classification kind of system that I could compete in. And so, that was a real game changer for me, being able to race against other people with different kinds of impairments, and depending on your disability, your classification would have a world record, and then your percentage of how close you were to that world record would determine where you placed in all of the para swimmers in the country. I just kind of really loved the feeling of kind of breaking down a big goal into littler steps. And then I guess it kind of went into representing New Zealand and traveling and all these amazing kind of spin-off things that have happened because of a love of water.
That is so cool. It really is.
How many countries have you been to, Mary?
Oh, this is a good question. So I've been to 2 Paralympic games, so London 2012 and Rio 2016 games, and then various other places for World Champs, or kind of like a para Pan America kind of. So I've never been to anywhere in Asia or Africa, but I would love to go traveling. I have been to Turkey for a competition, and kind of various places in Europe and Australia and the States and Canada. So it's been like a wild ride. And then I kind of retired from swimming end of 2018, and had quite a big gap away where I'd occasionally take myself to the pool because I felt like I should or needed to or something. Like I did really miss the structure and rigor and really, intense kind of 20 hours swimming every week and lots of gym stuff, which suddenly all fell away when I retired. And I feel lucky that it was my choice to like step away from the competitive stuff. It wasn't like a bad injury or that type of thing that meant I had to stop. But then, like at the beginning of last year, 2023, I got into swimming in the sea in Wellington just because a kind of friend emailed and said, "Oh, I'm thinking it'd be so cool to swim to Machu Somes Island in the middle of the harbour, wouldn't it? I remember us talking about that several years ago. Hey, do you want to come along and we'll figure out a guiding system and whatnot?" Because now I'm totally blind, and just rely on someone else, but we make it work. And then ice swimming this year was just a different kind of challenge and very different type of bodily feeling compared to really intense pool swimming or floundering around in various ocean environments type of swimming.
So we'll maybe come back to the pool swimming later, but obviously we're very keen and interested on the ocean swimming and the ice swimming.
Yeah.
I am king of stupid questions, Mary, as you will know already, right? So my sort of impression or understanding is that as a blind person, your other senses would be more heightened, right? So what does that? I was going to say, what does that look like? I don't know if that's appropriate, right? What does that?
That's
what does
totally
that mean when
fine,
you're in the ocean?
colloquial, not like language.
Thank you. There we go.
So it is really it's really interesting. So there's this, I guess, like terminology-wise, there's this whole umbrella term that is vision impairment, and so that's kind of anyone who might be totally blind or have low vision or be deaf blind. And so, of course, you use whatever senses you do have, like you just pay more attention to them. So I did have a hearing test a while back in case we could figure a training thing for my pool swimming that would be like a Bluetooth auditory thing in my ear. And they were like, "Oh yeah, your hearing is okay, but it's average. It's like not great." But there are totally times when I notice stuff for all my friends. And so I guess I'm just very aware of like the kind of spatial stuff going around me, and to whatever extent you can hear. I found like swimming in the winter with earplugs last year, and then the ice swimming, like quite discombobulating sometimes because of not having the hearing I would normally have, or wearing two caps, and like those kinds of sensations are really different. And being able to kind of work with the guide, we have a bungee cord type of tether that joins my lower thigh to their lower thigh, and then we kind of try and swim in parallel, which sometimes is okay. I think it's very like an individual thing. Some people prefer a longer tether if they're blind. Some people might be attached like waist to waist, but I find that my arm gets kind of caught up, so I can't do my full stroke when that kind of thing happens. Yeah.
So when you're swimming tethered, what's your preference, left or right hand side of your?
I nearly always go on the left, and I don't know why that is. But then with Alicia, one of the ice swimmers,
Which side do you breathe?
I breathe on both sides, but also dependent on the environment. Like if we've got really big swells coming in from the left, obviously, like sometimes I turn my head to the left and I would breathe in a wall of water, which I know everyone does, but it's like a little bit more, I think maybe possibly more often because I can't see the water. But I have occasionally swum on the guide's right, like when we did a little circumnavigation around Taputeranga Island, the island in Island Bay in Wellington on the south coast. And so I've done that twice now, and I swam on the outsides of when we were going anti-clockwise so that the guide was closest to the rocky portions of the island. So I have a preference being on the left, but I don't know why.
Okay. And so the reason why I'm asking is I swim with a little special needs guy, but he's obviously fully, visual and hearing. But we swim
Mm.
next to each other, and if I'm going
Yeah.
left, he follows me left. I'm literally
Mm.
the guide, right? In your case,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
wouldn't be able to see any sort of pointers or direction or anything. So how do you manage
Mm.
to go left, right, straight? What is it, stopping and talking, or is it a feel?
Yeah. It's a mixture of
Right.
things for sure for me. And it does depend on the day as well. Like if it's a real calm day at the Freiburg beach in Wellington, the guide can really clearly see exactly where we're going, and they can like pop their head up, or however they do their sighting. They
Mm.
spend all the energy like looking for where we're going. But I can feel that the tether is fairly taut, and if it gets too loose, I know that I'm probably going to like smush into them. So I kind of just peter my way back to my
Okay.
side. But on a more choppy day, sometimes it's just like, okay, I'm attached to the guide. I think we're going into the waves at this point in time, and we will stop at various points. Like the second buoy, we've agreed we'll go to the second buoy, and then Fountain Ahoy, and we might stop for a chat at the fountain and say hi to whoever else is around. So yeah, the wind direction definitely plays into like a sense of navigation, but I'm mostly just trusting that the guide is going the right way, and that when the tether gets taut, I need to like go closer to generally my right, but towards the guide. And sometimes you can feel the sun on your body, like, so that can also be a directional thing. Yeah.
That's super.
No, that's that's very cool. Is it very challenging getting people to swim with you? I know there's a great community down in Wellington, but because if they're too slow, then it must be a bit frustrating for you, and things like that.
It's yeah, I think there were several things that kind of were stopping my initial getting into the ocean, even though I've lived in Wellington and have, enjoyed being around the ocean. But there have since beginning and just like making that first step and going in and, starting in February last year, and then just pottering through winter and it all actually being okay, even though the anticipation of getting in when it's kind of a really cold or
Oh
bumpy
yes.
day. Yeah. I would say I swim with between 12 and 15 people as guides, and some of them are a bit faster than me and some of them are a bit slower than me. But we kind of just make it work. We have a bit of a chat at the beginning around like where we're expecting to be, and if someone's a bit slower than I am, what I tend to do is just do quite a slow stroke rate and do lots of kicking, and that tends to try and keep me warmer. And if someone is speedier than me, I just try and not make them pull my whole body weight as a dragging thing through the water. Just try and keep up with them as best I can. Yeah, and I guess it's like telling the guide, feel free to stop whenever if something becomes uncomfy. And at the beginning, I had a little bit of that, I don't know what's around me. I know I'm attached to someone, but this is really different from swimming in a chlorinated 26-degree, has lane ropes, has a solid wall every 25 or 50 meters kind of pool. So it felt kind of freeing being in the process of getting comfy in the ocean, and actually really enjoyable being able to swim. Generally, I go in the mornings before the day kind of begins, and just experiencing the breadth of types of like environmental conditions has been awesome. And often we're just swimming for half an hour or something, but you have kind of worked up to at the end of last year, the kind of main guide and I did the Rangatoto to St Heliers swim, which was I think 4.6 But yeah, so it's been really neat kind of targeting little ocean swim events.
Is the Rangi swim the furthest that you've swum in open water, or have you gone longer?
I think that's about the most I've done in one go. We swam like a 90 minutes at 12 degrees kind of in preparation for the ice swim, and we've swum around to Ballina Bay and back, which might be about the same distance, kind of just under 5K, maybe 4.8. But I would love to at some point do a 10K. That would be really neat. And of course, because I was swimming in the pool, I think I have done, several times of in one go swimming 5K, but was really targeting events 400 meters and less. So you just don't do that type of training. But I do really love the feeling of when me and my guide, whether it's like flat or a bit bumpy, but I can actually feel my forward movement, because sometimes when it's choppy, I'm like, I have no clue which way I'm going. I'm just glad I'm attached to another human in this whirlpool of washing machine-y stuff. But yeah, just getting into that rhythm of often I'm going way slower than I would have when I used to kind of train swimming and stuff. But that type of feeling where you feel like you could just go and go and go, and it would be cool to either have kind of an informal event or maybe go and do the epic 10K where it is like, here's a little bit more of a solid challenge.
I was just going to say the epic is a great swim. And I think if I recall, there was a ton of your Wellington crew down there earlier this year. So I'm sure there would be a whole bunch of people that would be happy to take you through a couple of laps of the epic. You could even do the epic.
I've heard about this, yes, this amazing combination of events. I think so. We've had the first two to know. The draft talks that Karina and I would maybe swim the 10K together, and then other people might swim their own kind of events. Which would be really neat. And I have had great response in terms of when I've kind of written to event organisers generally to say, hey, I'm a blind swimmer. I just have a guide that we have a small tether. So if let me know what you guys think you need for health and safety wise. But generally it's just a heads up to other swimmers. Try not to swim between people, because you might get caught in their tether, which even in the Wellington harbour has happened a few times when people haven't seen us and have kind of swum between us, or my guide hasn't seen them as well. You think, it's a giant
That's
piece
awesome.
of ocean, but often people are going between the same places and you get all muddled up.
Mary, tell us about your training, right? So are you completely out of the pool at the moment, or are you still doing a bit of a mix of ocean and pool?
Oh, right at the moment, I am doing maybe like one easy pool session a week. I'm not doing any training with squads. And until a few months ago, I had literally just swum in the sea and used the pool, warm showers. But the last couple of months I've been doing little bits here and there of swimming in the pool, which I think if I do go for the January 10K in Taupo, it would be really great to kind of bump up that in the pool training. One of the things that, and I'd say I probably kind of swim the OG loop, which if you do a little zigzag, it's kind of 1.5K in the ocean 3 weekday mornings a week, and then like this morning went and did the similar loop if I can fit in one weekend swim. So it's really a whole different type of interaction with water and community compared to when I was doing 8 to 10 pool sessions a week and a lot of kind of cross training, and that was a singular focus. But it's been really nice to kind of just whittle down I don't know. Yeah, it even feels weird to call it training to me. But it'd be also neat to kind of find a squad that would suit to work with. Because when I'm in the pool, I know if someone's in front of me because they, might kick and I'd feel their kick. But in public lanes especially, you often get a mix of kind of people doing different types of sets if they're doing actual training, or if they're just kind of pottling around doing freestyle. Then it's like such a range of how much people can or do kick, and sometimes they swim into people's feet or further up their bodies, and just have to apologize and be like, I'm really sorry.
I'm probably one of those problem children, because you put a pool boy on me and then my kicking is zero, and there's not going to be much notice that there's somebody in front of you if it was me, because you'd be coming past me, that's for sure. So, Mary, we've talked a bit about the open water, but I just want to make sure that we just sort of cover over some of the awesome pool swimming that you've done. You mentioned that you went to a couple of Paralympics, but you didn't just go there. You had quite a lot of success there. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what the experience was at the Paralympics and some of the other big events that you've done?
Yeah, sure. Like, I don't know, as a 9-year-old, when I began swimming at the Upper Hutt pool and club, and it just seemed like such a world away to think, oh, is this possible? To attend the biggest event in the world for me, which would be a Paralympic Games in terms of swimming stuff. And then the next 10 years, I just had this amazing group of family and friends and support people who in like little and big ways helped me out. So I went to a short course, a 25-meter racing pool, which is kind of unusual. World champs in 2009, and had been to a couple of competitions in Aussie before that, but really thought, okay, I'm going to fully focus on swimming. I really enjoy academic stuff, but I have a small window of life to kind of do this properly. And kind of qualified for the London 2012 Games. Got the call that I was on the team, which was really exciting because I knew I'd made the time, but we weren't sure of, there's quota spots that New Zealand had. And at that time, we had a really strong group of swimmers, and we needed to apply for 2, they call them bipartite slots, but we were given both, and so 2 of my other teammates got to come on those slots, and we had this real strong team in London. And suddenly I was like, oh wow, Upper Hutt kid, now living in Wellington City, but in this, in London, the metropolis of where all of Europe and the world is getting together to show their best sporting endeavours and things. And the pool was packed. I'd never heard noise like that at like a heats, let alone a finals, when the top 8 times qualify. And I swam personal bests. I'd been training really, really hard. Just knew that I'd put everything into the preparation, and that if I swam my fastest, and I had a funny conversation a few weeks ago with Phil Rush and some of the ocean swimmers about some advice he gave me before London when I didn't know him very well, but he would, be on pool deck and would overlap sometimes. He said, Mary, now remember, there's no limits to how fast you're allowed to go, so just go off and do your thing. And and it was great advice. And I just had such a lovely, tiny team, and it suddenly kind of bursting on with the Paralympic team, and all of this kind of New Zealand stuff, and the Paralympics were treated so equally. And in GB, it was just like the advertising and the recognition of athletes was incredible compared to here. I think, this year we may have kind of caught up to in New Zealand, we may have caught up to where London was. And we were welcomed into the village by Ngāti Rānana, the kind of kapahaka group based in London, in Rānana, and just had this incredible time of being with so many athletes from different parts of the globe with different impairments, and all really focused on doing their absolute best. So I did personal best in all my events, and on my last event I had got 2 silvers and a bronze earlier in the 10-day competition, and the last event was the 200 medley, and won it in a world record time, which was incredible because in the heat swim I had qualified second fastest, but in my heat I had broken the world record, and then German woman in the next heat had broken the one I just set, and so she was going in ranked first into the final. And then of course none of us can see each other or know where anyone is or what the time is, or so you finish, and I was exhausted and relieved that it was the last event I had, but I had no idea the result versus other people. I just knew that I couldn't have gone any faster, and it was such a special feeling, like best kind of day of my life. And the tapper, there's a person that stands on the end with a long stick with a squishy bit, and as I swim towards them, they lean out and go on your head. So the tapper had guided me out of the pool, and in my classification, everyone is blind. Some people who do have light perception, like I still have light perception. So we all wear blacked out goggles, and the goggles had to be checked before the result was official. So I just remember this doesn't happen to all the athletes. Some of them do get told immediately, but I think my TAF was really lovely and wanted to check the results were official and stuff. So I just sort of was waiting, like, oh. But yeah, she kind of grabbed my shoulders and went, "Mary, you got the gold, you broke the world record," and it's kind of like an amazing moment. And yeah, just like representing Aotearoa New Zealand on the world stage, ticking all of the things I could have ever dreamt of as a kid beginning swimming in the like formal sense. And then coming home and suddenly all these people, you have these tangible things to show to children, and kind of get invited to talk at lots of places that I would have been way too shy to have talked at a couple of years ago. But suddenly you're like, actually, everyone has things that are difficult in their life, and mine are, more visible than other people sometimes. And so, to kind of like talk a bit about the Paralympic movement and go to second Paralympics, where I was more focused on the backstroke, and the program, the New Zealand program, had been centralised to Auckland, where I didn't know anyone really, and it was just such a different games, but won the backstroke event, and that was really exciting. And just travelled to a whole lot of places and met people all over the globe who I'm still friends with today. And and I guess just that thing of like how far can my body and mind go, and I do need some support with being able to achieve that, and it might just look a bit different to other people who might not need a random person to, well, no, it's a very specific person that you trust a lot to tap you on the head in exactly the right spot. But people need different kinds of support in life, and that's okay.
I'm quite interested in sort of the whole sort of disabled piece of it. We did our talk with Francois, and that was really fascinating.
Yeah.
He's a pretty cool guy. But you stayed very involved with Paralympics and disabled, and I think you're still involved with in that space. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how you're supporting other people, or what it is that you do to support people with disabilities?
Yeah, sure. So when I finished the formal competitive swimming part of my life, I had a few months off, and then ended up on the board of Paralympics NZ. So that was a really different phase where I was learning a lot about different sports codes that I had heard of but didn't really know much about the intricacies of them or what support they needed. And then I've I guess being one of the go-to people. We haven't had that many athletes with vision impairment since I stopped swimming, in terms of like national, international level competition. But there are some who are there, and I think it's really important for people, to be able to see themselves in various fields. And when I was growing up, there was a guy, Tim Prendergast, who now lives in the UK, but was based in Wellington at that time, Kiwi kind of middle distance runner. And I had quite an intense dislike of running, but he was very supportive of my swimming efforts. And he won the gold in Athens in 2004 when I was 11 years old in the 800 metres for guys with low vision. And that was incredible to me that he was this Wellingtonian going and conquering the world. And, at the same time, we had all these amazing women like competing as well. And I thought, if I train really hard, could I do that? And so, to be on the other side of post-retirement, it is really neat to be able to go in a couple of weeks' time. I'll head to Christchurch, and there's a swimming camp, weekend of swimming being put on by Blind Sport NZ and Swimming New Zealand. So I'll kind of be around as a mentor and that type of thing for that group of people. There's various ways of being engaged in sport, and some are disability specific and some are more trying to upskill local clubs and coaches to say, hey, often your athlete with an impairment might not need too much extra support. Like they might, just need someone to help them from the change rooms to the pool and then be totally fine, or just figuring out how their athlete might learn in different ways. So for me, I could never see a coach demonstrating like visually what a stroke should look like on the side of the pool, even when I had some usable vision. So finding a coach who could, and everyone has different like strengths and their like verbal language and stuff, but and some of those things are stuff people can work on, and some of those things that help me are, some people are just really naturally good at it, a bit like tapping. Some people seem to have amazing like hand-eye spatial coordination awareness, because that is so important to have that at the same centimetre every time. It's like someone being able to see the flags or the tee on the bottom of the pool. So I guess it's like just trying to make sure that people involved in community and grassroots sport know that there are pathways often for para-athletes. There's not that many of us in New Zealand because, spread out population. But are there not that many of us because people might not feel comfy or like they belong in their local club? Trying to lift the hopes and expectations of young people with impairment and lift the educational knowledge of probably non-disabled like coaches and managers and stuff in local groups.
Just leading on from that sort of your involvement with the Paralympic and disabled thing, what's your sort of feeling that you can are people more accepting of disabled athletes and disabled people in general across New Zealand? Is attitudes changing, or what's your feeling in that space?
I think things are improving gradually over time is my kind of guesstimate, and the visibility of the Paralympics, I think especially this year, having so much coverage, free to air, that people could go back and watch. It wasn't even quite like the Olympics where for the first time my partner and I like paid a subscription for an entertainment thing, and then everything was available for 24 hours after or live, which was fun and neat to, as someone who's not particularly actually that sporty. I always feel bad when I'm at a quiz and people are like, "Oh, Mary, yay, there's a sports round," and I'm like, "Oh no, the responsibility," and my knowledge is actually pretty bad in some areas of sport. But yeah, I think the visibility and the accessibility of a good amount of the Paralympic coverage. Unfortunately, there were some of the athletes, especially the target shooters, who we couldn't get coverage for this time. But like overall, the quantity and having Dame Sophie Pascoe, talking with Scotty was great, and at a kind of mainstream hour or whatever you call that part where there's often early evening, lots of TV being watched, that was great. And Halberg Trust kind of supporting young people with physical or visual impairment up to the age of 21. So I think those types of things are kind of well known in the Halberg Awards. But I think it can vary so much. If you are a young athlete who has a negative experience because a coach is like worried or afraid, or is like, "Oh, you'll take up the time of 3 people, or you'll need this extra bit of equipment," and I don't think there's any funding for that. Like if people are not knowledgeable about what might be out there, or actually the positives of having a young disabled person in their squad, then that experience can really, burn people and like break trust in how people perceive you. Like I remember when I was moving from the Upper Hutt Club, and I knew I wanted to train with speedier people and like people my age, which there was slowly becoming less of as all my friends who had grown up swimming with kind of went on to various things, and I really wanted to see if I could knuckle down and make a Paralympic Games. That me and my family asked around a few coaches, and some of them were like, "Oh, it's going to be dangerous having you as a blind swimmer in a squad with sighted kids," or "Oh, we could do one-on-one, but it's going to be, I don't know, this exorbitant amount." And it just took like one genuinely caring, kind of like open-minded open to options type of coach to say, oh yeah, yep, I'll come and see how you regularly train at the moment, and let's like make it work. Like I don't have all the answers now, but I'm willing to find out, and if you're willing to put in the work, I really want to support that. And that was amazing for me as like a 17-year-old who had these big dreams but did need a bit of extra support.
No, that's wonderful. So just going back to the tapping. So the tapping is with a stick and a soft thing. It's not a sound based thing, isn't it?
No, yeah, it's a tactile signal, and each blind swimmer, or if you are a swimmer with who might be called legally blind or have low vision up to a certain point where you are still eligible to compete in Paralympic sport, they are allowed to choose the people who have some vision. They're allowed to choose if they want a tapper or not. And depending on someone's different type of eye condition, some people might find that really useful and some people might not need it. But everyone in my classification has to have 2 tappers, so one person at each end. And you're allowed to choose how long you want the tapper to be. Some people might use like a white cane that someone would use to navigate with a tennis ball on the end, and that would be really short for me. I would feel like, oh no, I want more distance knowledge before the wall, but some people just prefer that to feel the tap and then hit the wall with your hand, hopefully. But my tapper is about double that length, and so it kind of taps my head when I'm about just over 2 meters out, and so I typically would feel it and do one more stroke and finish or turn on that stroke. Yeah, so you have to trust it. You're going full tilt often, Yeah.
Yeah, I could imagine. So when you go to like the Paralympics, do you take somebody along with you as a tapper, or do you just rely on the event organisers? And
yeah, it's a really common question, and it's a great question. So that person you want to have practiced with a decent amount before. So it's generally someone from your home nation who has done it a bit in training, but there's also this issue with allocated like slots and people, so as well as the athletes, like the support staff, you're only allowed so many per team. Often my tapper would be the team manager or one of the coaches, but it's also dependent on the other swimmers' schedules. So if a particular coach who's really good at tapping also needed to be around to support another swimmer, like, I don't know, moving a prosthetic leg or just like general coaching, that could change the type, like the person who might be tapping you, and you just have to be prepared. So everyone who might become a tapper has to do a good amount of
there must be a huge amount of trust involved. Hey,
yes, there is. Yeah, and if they tap you, if they tap you too far out, you're likely to tumble turn or finish and be like, where's the wall? I'm gliding really slowly now, or I've tumbled and my feet haven't made contact with the wall, or I've got a really weak push off because you tapped me too far out and I thought I would be pushing off in the perfect spot here. But yeah, if they miss you or tap too close, you also have this issue of smushing into the wall, which is not fun either.
No, I can imagine. Yeah, even as a sighted swimmer, I sometimes screw up on the tumble turns. Although in my case, it's more of a fumble turn. So,
no, I'm sure your tumble turns are great.
So Duncan asked, have you ever used a service dog, or maybe have you ever considered using a service dolphin as a guide?
I would love a service dolphin. I don't know how, I like the idea. Yeah, I don't know how animal welfare, sea mammal stuff, how legit that would be. But I have a guide dog called Velvet. We've been working together for pretty much exactly 2 years now. And before her, I'd never had like a pet or another guide dog. She was being thrown into the fire of learning all about like what's normal and learning to trust her also, because often on land, even with like best intentions and feeling competent as a cane user or a guide dog user, being in the pool is just so much more freeing. And you can kind of meditate or tune out, which is what I feel like some people can do when they're walking. This type of my body is automatically processing the visual stuff around when I can just walk and cool off or warm up or whatever it is. But for me, that's definitely a thing that happens in the pool.
Okay, that's cool. So Duncan's also, is it a dive start that you use? Because just standing up on the blocks, I'm just guessing what it must feel like. There's a huge amount of faith that you're actually being pointed in the right direction, and
that you're being pointed into water. I mean, the blocks do slant, but because you can't see what's in the pool, there is the trust that, but like there's all these other athletes around you who are also climbing up onto the blocks. So yes, all the blind swimmers would do a dive start. We just get shown up to so you're wearing your tracksuit and trying to keep warm in the marshalling area, and all of your gear gets checked, and then you get walked out to the pool, and it's like, overwhelming noise. And you get shown where your chair and little basket thing to hold your tracksuit or whatever it is, and then the guide takes you to the block. And I typically like to be taken to the left-hand side of the block because I'm not my balance is a lot better than it was, but still I like climbing up to the block from a certain side. And you choose where you put the little kicker thing. If you might have seen the last few Olympic and Paralympic games, there's been this kind of fin at the back of the start block so you can push off. So that's also you can get an assistant to do that, but that's a very easy tactile thing to learn to do for yourself as well. And then you're trusting that the pool still has water in it, but there's probably been a race just before you and they've all made a splash and it should be fine. But all of us do dive starts. It's really interesting learning about the starts that people with physical impairment might use, because depending on different people's disability, some of them will sit on the block and kind of propel themselves in, or some people it might suit best to start in the water, and some people can do a regular start.
Cool. The whole classification system is quite complicated, but I'm guessing with vision impairment, it's there's probably easier ways of measuring it. I listened to a podcast with one of Cameron, and he was explaining some of it. It must be pretty challenging. Do you feel that it ends up being fair for everybody?
I think the current system works for the vast majority of athletes, but it is tricky because it's not, there are multiple classifications, and I guess with sports where you have weight gradings or something, that there are people throughout that band of the lowest to highest weight, but this is with physical disability, and also with vision. We have this classification that I'm in where people all wear black dart goggles, so that doesn't that takes out any light perception differences that we might have. But there's the other category for people who have some usable vision, but similar to where there's differences in physical disability, that you've got these scientific things that have calculated ways of how much your disability impacts your function on swimming specifically. So if you went and did a different sport, you might need different muscles or different things, like different types of mobility or range of movement might be more useful. But for swimming, these things are the things that are most useful and most important. And of course, it's really interesting because breaststroke compared to the other strokes has, more leg involvement. So there's a slightly different classification for people when they're going and getting classified in breaststroke. But I think it does a fairly good job at the moment, but there's always ways that most systems can be improved. Yeah,
absolutely.
But I can appreciate how it looks really weird when you've got an S6 classification, and there might be someone with no arm on one side and a tiny bit of an arm on the other side, and they're racing someone who has short stature, and they're racing someone who has a spinal cord injury, but all of those people look really different, but the amount of function they have in the water has been worked out because of these scientific-y kinds of interesting physics processes to be similar.
When I was watching the last Paralympics, you can't tell by looking what what the
Yeah, yeah,
disability is. Yeah. Well,
yeah.
although I have found in swimming, just by looking at a person, you've got no clue how much they're going to beat you by, because sometimes you think, oh, I'll
It's a
easily
thing,
beat
right,
that
with
person, and you
whoever.
get thumped.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So, we met you down in Alexandra where you're doing some ice swimming.
Mm.
So, I was just wondering, how did you enjoy the experience, and is it something you're going to do more of?
I loved the experience. It was so neat to hear about the whole ice swimming event last year at St. Bathans from all the dozen Wellingtonians who kind of travelled and had a blast together. And then I thought, actually, that is a very different type of challenge that I haven't really tried before. I have been someone who's a bit of a wimp about the cold. Like, that was one of the things I was worried about when I first started swimming in the harbour when it was like
Yeah.
18 or 19 degrees. and and was kind of halfway through the swim, and the guide and I would check on it at the very first type of thing, and I was like, I'm feeling okay. My feet are a bit cold. Like, I can't even think of myself now. Your body gets used to different feelings, eh? But yeah, swimming in colder than 5 degree water was such an interesting experience, and like as everyone says, the community and kind of getting to know a few people, and people coming and introducing themselves or supporting each other on the pool deck. And when we had, the situation in Alexandria, you could be, that the 1 meter had to be clear for medical personnel and the lifeguards and stuff. And so cool to meet those types of people, like Joy, who'd come from a very warm part of Australia to come and be a lifeguard. Like, it was amazing to meet all the different people. But yeah, I could be so close to the swimmers, which in previous years has not really been the case. So I could hear where people were stroking, and and I remember just doing that registration day and them saying, oh, okay, yeah, and you can swim up to 100 meters. And I was like, okay, I'll go and do a 50, and jumping out at the end of the 50 and thinking that was okay. Oh no, my hands are really sore now. It was like less than a minute in the water. Oh, my face had only just gone in and stuff. So yeah, wildly interesting and communal experience. Yeah, completely different to any other type of swimming I've done. But I'd totally be keen. I did the 500 and 500 free and the 100 and 200 medley in a couple of relays, which were awesome.
Yeah.
I would be keen to go and maybe have a crack at the 1K and the mile next year at St. Bathans. Just needing to think about the best types of ways of guiding for those.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting, because you've got to get a guide who can do it as well. Yeah, that's going to be interesting.
Yeah, or
so have you ever worn a
being
wetsuit?
attached to the boat. Yeah. I have a couple of times, but not in the last 2 years. I did a triathlon a few years ago that I did wear a wetsuit for, and a triathlon I think a couple of years before that where I didn't own a wetsuit, and it was like a para triathlon, which is a sprint distance triathlon, so 750 swim. And the organisers were like, oh, okay, for para athletes, if it's below 15, you have to wear a wetsuit, and especially for people who are amputees and have different kind of circulation needs and stuff. And I was like, oh no, can I write to them and get out of wearing a wetsuit? Which did end up happening, which was excellent, because I think the water got even colder and they moved it to like a 350 meter swim. It was like it was a very bearable distance for me. Yeah, I did swim with someone who was a bit slower than me at that time, and that was very cold.
So a couple of questions from Duncan. He says, well, maybe what we should consider is whether you could be tethered to the IRB and still do some open water swimming.
Yeah, I think that might be the way to go, actually, because I think at ice swimming conditions, when it's just so much colder than most other water, I think maybe tethering to IRB, as long as we could do it in a way that I didn't hit them too much or they weren't pulling me along, I think that might be the way to go. Yeah.
Yeah. So another one from
left and right.
From Duncan is are you saving up for a driverless Tesla car so that you can go driving around and hooning around Wellington?
I've not started saving for that particular thing yet, but I would totally love to have a go in one. And yeah, I'm kind of open to all types of technology. One of the things about Wellington I love is how walkable it is, and that I can actually walk to Freiburg Beach from here if I need to. It is easier to get a ride in an automobile. But yeah, driverless cars and just all the technology, like you might have recently heard about. I don't know, other apps that you can either be linked to. AI can tell you stuff, or you can be linked to another human, like Be My Eyes, which is like a volunteer app. Or there's just so many cool things that technology has opened up for blind and low vision and deafblind people. That growing up 100 years ago as a person with vision impairment would have just been completely different and with a lot fewer opportunities.
That's very cool. So I suppose just kind of coming to the end of it, what does your bucket list look like? What things would you still like to achieve?
I think I've moved a little bit away from particular events, but I would still love to challenge my body and brain in various ways that I haven't yet done. So yeah, I think kind of swimming that 10K plus stuff in one go in an open water situation would be really awesome. And I guess, like going to different parts of the world, the ice swimming has definitely made me think about, like swimming in very cold or remote places and that type of thing. I was in Iceland for a week in 2015 on the way back from the world champs that year of swimming that were held in Scotland. And I remember swimming in 12-degree water there that the water had been warmed up to 12 degrees because it was like an outlet for their geothermal stuff that had been happening, and thinking, wow, I should really get into some of this ocean swimming, and it's finally happening, which is very cool. So I'd be super keen to travel more places in Aotearoa and just discover more about various communities, and hope that all young people who have an impairment, feel like and actually do have the opportunities that their non-disabled peers do have. Yeah, those kind of things I want to chip away at. Doing an Ironman sometime, that would be cool. Like, if I think about specific events. But yeah, I just really need to work on my running. I have done some long runs in the past with a Tarawera Ultra, but yeah, I think doing a really long triathlon at some point would be awesome.
That's amazing. Well, Mary, thank you so much for chatting to us. Duncan has been messaging me all the way through because his technology's failed, which is
all good.
Which is terrible.
These things happen.
They do. But it's just been wonderful chatting to you, and thank you very much.
Thanks for the invite. Yeah, have a lovely evening.
Well, that was the Clever Dicks podcast, hosted by myself, Jim West, and Duncan Cookard. As always, we'd appreciate any comments or suggestions that you may have. It may be people to interview or topics to cover. If you want to send us some comments, you could use email and go to cleverdicksnz@gmail.com, or drop us a comment on Instagram at clever_dicks. If you did enjoy this episode, please tell your friends about it. It'll really help us grow the podcast. See you in the water. Bye.